This podcast is a 98 Studios production.
Today's the day, baby.
Today's the day.
Today's the day.
Today's the motherfucking day. Today is the day.
Today's the day.
Today is the day. Today's the day.
What up, everybody? Welcome back to Today's the Day. We're gonna have a fun episode today. I'm excited to introduce you guys to Mr. Taylor Turnbull, and I'm just stoked you're here. I'm glad you made time to be here. You flew in town. You had a busy weekend. It seems like you actually extended your trip to make this happen.
Yes.
Even though you haven't explicitly said that. So I appreciate you a ton. Thank you. And then you got in the world's slowest Uber to get here from Salt Lake.
Yeah, dude. I almost got out and ran.
So
we ended up in the neighborhood behind here. It was a whole thing.
The studio's an interesting place to find, and most people have a hard time. So I'm glad you're here, though. I'm super glad.
I'm stoked to be here, dude. Thanks for the invite.
So to give everyone a quick like reasoning behind everything. So Taylor, you're one of the VPs over the West Coast of the street, so the largest solar sales force in the United States. You're one of the VPs overseeing that. You've been a part of Vivint Solar and Sunrun in this whole game since the beginning of it. And you've had a front seat and been a really big part of a lot of the biggest plays in the space. And then you're just a really cool dude. We've gotten to hang out quite a bit since I've been at Sunrun. I've enjoyed it a ton. I've learned a lot from you. I've picked your brain a little bit, and I'm just stoked to have you here. I think there's definitely a conversation worth having on recording for everybody to participate in, and that's kind of the whole reason for it, man. So I'm stoked to have you, and I appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks, man. It was cool getting to know you, throughout since you made the transition over to Sunrun, but I think also, getting to hang in helicopters in New Zealand and cold plunge in a mountain lake. That was pretty cool. So
then racing Porsches,
and yeah, we haven't known each other that long. We've done some pretty epic stuff together. So yeah,
we've done some cool stuff.
Yeah. So
I'm super stoked. So Taylor, give us the rundown. Break it down. Who's Taylor Turnbull? Where are you from? How were you raised? Like, how did you end up where you're at? And then I've got a million questions for I could pick your brain all day.
Cool.
I'll be respectful of everyone's time, but where are you from? What was your upbringing? How did you get to where you're at, and where are you currently?
Yeah, so I'm originally from Idaho. So, generations in Idaho, farm boy. And I didn't grow up on a farm, but my mom grew up on a potato farm, one of 10 kids. And my dad grew up son of a carpenter and humble beginnings for both of them, but really just kind of awesome, grandparents and great grandparents and stuff. And all from that Idaho part. We moved to Utah when I was in junior high. And so went to junior high school in Utah, graduated from Lone Peak High School. And then went to Ghana on my LDS mission.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really a pretty formative experience in my life for a lot of reasons, but one of the big ones was meeting one of my best friends, Paul Dixon, and just kind of forming our friendship through some pretty incredible experiences that we both had living in West Africa as 19, 20-year-olds. Yeah, it was just amazing. Like, I can't believe that we have those experiences at that age, just going out into a part of the world that we don't know. I mean, I'm fluent in an African tribal dialect, which, as you can imagine, is not the most useful
How
language
often do you
to know.
get to use that?
Oh man, maybe once a year, like when I actually speak it with someone.
And when you break it out, are they like, what the hell?
If it's, most of the time it's talking to someone from Ghana who's calling me or something like that.
Yeah.
But if I meet a Ghanaian, which happened just a couple months ago, and talk to them, they typically I'll like start talking to them, find out they're from Ghana, find out which part they're from, and then most of the time they speak it's a language called Tree, and most of the time they if they'll speak that language if they're from Ghana, or they'll understand it. And so I'll start speaking it to them, and it's literally, they've never experienced it before. They're like, they can't believe it.
Yeah.
And so it's cool. I'll bust it out,
That's so
and
legit.
it's still kind of there. I mean, dude, it was 2004 to 2006 that I was there. So it's 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Which is a wild thing to think.
Yeah.
But it was cool because when I went to Africa,
Mm-hmm.
obviously I didn't really know what to expect.
Mm-hmm.
And I was supposed to be in an English speaking mission, but I got sent out into like the villages, and I spent basically my whole mission out, really far away from the main city with usually no electricity or intermittent electricity.
Mhm.
Usually no running water, and so getting my water out of a well, cup and bucket showers and that kind of stuff. And eating food that I wasn't sure what it was a lot of the time,
Yeah.
Um, but one of the things that was really kind of interesting in that whole process was learning a language that you have no training in, um, really creates some resilience in you, right? Because I was talking about this yesterday to my director group, and about the experience of like saying all the words that you know to someone in a new conversation.
Mhm.
Like all the words that I knew in their language, I would say pretty much every conversation for 6 months. I'd get to the end of my ability to like say any more things to them, you know?
Yeah.
And so it was like failing so much and putting yourself out there so much
Mhm.
consistently. And, really like that was the only way that I could create mastery in that in learning that language.
Yeah.
Um and then at the end of that kind of then you get like the alchemy, I guess, part of it, like after you've done the work consistently for a long time, then all of a sudden things just start to come together and flow for you.
Mhm.
And so that was a really kind of cool process that
Mhm.
I think at the time I probably took for granted, but looking back on it, I'm like, man, that was pretty crazy at 19 to go live in a
How
place like that.
valuable is that? How valuable is that to go at 19
Yeah,
years old and go learn probably more than just that, like, probably 50 lessons that you wouldn't learn until you face some crazy hardship in life when you're 50 and it
totally.
crumbles your whole life. Like,
Totally. Yeah.
that's so cool.
Yeah, and it forges something in you, which is like a confidence that you can face anything,
Yeah.
and just with time and consistency and like resilience and optimism. And I think I get this from my mom for sure. Like just always looking at a situation and feeling like, you know what? This is fine. Like everything's gonna be okay,
Mhm.
and like I can get through this and I can have fun in it. Um and I was actually so I have 5 kids,
Mhm.
um,
Which is crazy.
which is wild.
That's
Yeah.
wild.
It's crazy. My oldest are twin boys and they're 16 years old, so they drive, dude.
Oh, that's legit.
It's it's amazing. They're such studs. Like Cal and Mason, they're amazing, identical twins. They're taller than me now, so it's like they're 6'2". They're
Legit.
just dude, they're studs. They're so cool. But they're running track right now. And I was telling them my mom came into town and we went to their track meet. And my mom was telling me the story about when she was growing up in Idaho and she decided to run track. She'd never done it before.
Mhm.
And she was running, I'd never heard this story. This was the first time, just this was a few weeks ago. And she got put in the 800-meter race, right? Which is like that's the hardest race to run because it's just long enough that it's like you can't sprint the whole time. But if you don't run at like 80% of your capacity,
Mhm.
then you won't win the race.
Yeah.
And people have the hardest time kind of pacing it right,
They either
So
go and gas themselves or they're too slow to keep
or they're
up.
too slow and they can't kick at the end or whatever.
Yep.
So my mom like starts the race and just like takes off, and she doesn't know what the 800 is. So she starts running and she's just like way out ahead of the pack. And she kind of looks back and she's like 100 meters ahead of everyone. She's
Mhm.
just like feeling really good. So she's like, oh, I'm going to crush this race. So she goes around the first lap because 2 laps. And when she gets to the second lap, she starts to feel like, oh, wow, like I'm pretty gassed. My legs are, feeling it, whatever. And like by the 600-meter mark, everyone starts passing her. And like with 100, like as she's rounding the last bend, she's like pretty far behind. And so instead of like running and finishing, she just takes the corner and like runs off of the track and out of the stadium and
She's
left.
gone.
Yeah, dude.
She's gone.
She's just like, I'm not
No.
like, I'm doing this on my own terms.
She's like, "They can't say I lost if I didn't finish, so
Yeah,
so
dude.
I'm gone."
She's like, yeah, I mean, I don't want to lose. So I'm just going to go ahead and like run out of the stadium.
Why do I
So
feel like that's actually a good move?
it kind of is, dude. Like, it's funny because obviously you'd want to be like, no, you finished the race no matter what, whatever. But my mom doesn't wait in lines. She doesn't like, she's always been known to like show up with this like incredible energy. And in fact, like, so she had 6 kids.
Mm-hmm.
So I have 5 siblings. I'm the fourth of 6 kids. And my dad was an entrepreneur, and he started like Subway. He started franchising Subway restaurants back in like the early 90s, so right when it was a new thing. And so he had the franchise rights for Idaho Falls and Pocatello and where we lived. And so, and then he was always kind of doing other things like starting up different, you know, like yogurt shops and like take and bake pizza when that was a thing. And
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. And my mom would always support and help and work in those businesses. But like her primary focus was like the kids and, you know, making sure that we were being raised and fed and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And so when we all, you know, grew up and left the house and, you know, they're empty nesters, my dad had retired and my mom just kind of had this feeling like, you know what, I'm going to become a life coach. And she had a really good friend, Jody Moore, who runs the life coach school. She's amazing. So she went and did this whole certification to become a life coach, and that's what she does now.
No way.
Oh, dude, she's legit. Like, she's really, really good at it. And I've always said this to people, but like, my mom's gifts, her giftedness that she has, like, she poured those things into me, and that's what makes me good at my job. Like, all of those things are like the things that make me good. So I'm like, if my mom would have had the opportunity that I have, I actually think she would have crushed it more. Like, she would have dominated.
Yeah.
So we had this thing at Sunrun called She Run. I don't know if you've like seen it yet. Amber Helgeson, shout out Amber. She started it about a year ago. And so this last month or a few weeks ago, we had an event in San Diego. And so it's all the women from the business, Mary Powell, who's obviously our CEO. And then, you know, a lot of the directors and VPs and all the, you know, female kind of leadership and the reps. And there were like 300 people in our office in San Diego, 300 of our, you know, female employees that came together for it. And my mom came and spoke to the group, and she has never spoken, like, she's never public spoken before ever. And so I was actually kind of a little like nervous for her. Like, I didn't know how she was going to do. And she crushed. Like, it was so awesome to watch her.
That's so cool.
Just step into that and like,
yeah, that's
you know what
crazy.
I mean? Like,
and
watching
be in your world too.
Yeah.
Like, that's really unique. The fact that she gets to come be a little part of your world and have
Yeah.
a little bit of influence in your world is really cool.
Yeah, it was awesome.
That's
And
very cool.
you know how that is. Like, you grow up and obviously you go out on your own and you do your thing, and to be able to kind of share that with her. You know, my dad was there, my sister was there, and they were watching too. But like, it was a pretty special thing. So, anyway, when Paul and I got home from the mission,
Yeah.
we were roommates at BYU. And we both, you know, met our wives, and we got married like a week apart from each other. And we were kind of like trying to figure out what to do, because we had this mission president who, his name's Bob Gay. He was one of the founders of Bain Capital with Mitt Romney. So and when Mitt left to go do the Olympics and the, you know, become the governor of Massachusetts and all that stuff, he took over at Bain and was the managing director there. And he was in the midst of raising the largest private equity fund at that time that had ever been raised. And he got called to serve as a mission president in the middle of that.
That's wild.
And that whole story is actually pretty crazy. There's a lot of like things around that happen that are so cool. But so he left and he went to Ghana, and he served as the, you know, to oversee all these 19 to 21-year-old kids.
Could you imagine?
No,
Could
honestly.
you imagine being at that point in your life about to do that thing, and then it's like, hey, we want you to go to Ghana and basically babysit.
And
And
babysit.
basically, there's a lot more to it.
Yeah,
Mission
of
presidents are
course.
amazing and have the most. I never had a mission president, but have the most impact. But literally, kind of babysit. Like,
Yeah,
you're in charge of all these 19-year-olds now. Good luck.
100%. I mean,
I couldn't imagine that.
no, you go from a really big position in a world that's like hyper competitive, really legit. Like, he was living a pretty incredible life and doing huge things.
Yeah.
And so
That says a ton about him.
yeah,
That says a ton about him. That's
well,
really cool.
yeah, it doesn't. And they do a lot of things, a lot of like philanthropic things. And I was just with him in South Africa in November for a trip we took over there, and it was just awesome to spend time around him again. But when Paul and I were with him, we just kind of like got a taste for what it was like, because he ran the mission like an investment bank, basically. We were
Yeah.
like we when we were with him in the office, it was like we didn't have normal hours. We were cranking like
Yeah.
early mornings, late nights,
Whatever it
and
took to make
yeah,
it
whatever
happen.
it took, yeah. And so we just kind of had this, both of us kind of had this entrepreneurial spirit. So when we got back, we were like, well, what do we do while we're going to BYU? I got my degree in neuroscience at BYU, and I was planning to go to med school, and that was fully my plan. And we just kind of were like, well, what do we do to, pay for our lives and pay for school and all that kind of stuff? And so we were like, should we detail cars? Should we like wash windows? And we had this opportunity to, it's actually crazy, like even thinking about how this came about for us. But there was a guy that my dad knew that was like a pharmaceutical sales guy who had bought this company. It sounds made up, but he bought this company called Meter Solutions, and he like wanted to do it as a passive investment, but it needed someone to run it.
Yeah.
And he realized that pretty quickly, like, oh, I bought this business, but no one's running it. So he approached my dad about maybe investing in it. And my dad was like, well, I don't really want to, but like, Taylor just got home from his mission. And so, you can talk to him. So I met with this guy, his name's Jerry Henley. And so I met with Jerry. And at the time, Paul and I were like doing everything together. So I'm like, hey, come with me and let's talk to this guy. And we talked to him about like going and running some projects for him during the summer when we didn't, when we weren't going to school.
Yeah.
And I mean, dude, we were 21. We didn't know anything, but we were like, hey, we should just like buy half the company from this guy, and like, we should do that instead, not go work for him. So we negotiated a deal at 21 years old.
This dude just like, yeah, whatever you want, bro. Just run it for
Oh
me,
yeah.
please.
I mean, dude, at the time we had to raise $100,000 to buy half the company, and then to have like enough working capital to pay ourselves and like, fund the operations of the business. And so, I mean, dude, we were 21, $100,000 might as well have been $1 billion. Like
Yeah.
I had $90 in my bank account.
Yeah,
You know what I
yeah.
mean? Like, and I had never seen any money before.
So where did you get the $100,000?
We tapped family, and we were able to get, we were able to cobble together some money, and had our investors that, that believed in us, and just
Did
said,
they
hey,
get their payouts?
yeah, they got their payouts,
we go.
which was cool,
That is
because I remember my dad was one of the investors, and he was like, hey, listen, he and my mom, like sat down with me, and he was like, hey, we're going to give you this money. And he's like, I'm going to approach this like I'm not going to get that money back, but I want you to go work hard and try to make this like a good investment for us. And I was like, oh, well, I mean, I guess thanks for the vote of confidence.
Honestly, great approach on his part.
Yeah.
Great approach on his part. Pretty smart. Like,
Yeah,
there's a 95% chance from the outside looking in that's just
there
gonna
was
end.
a 99.9% chance. Because, dude, the reality was like, he knew that I was planning to go to med school.
Yeah.
And I was, a year in already, because I'd gone to school before my mission. So I only had a few years to like make a run at something, which you never have a successful thing in 3 years. It takes 5 years to start to see like the potential of something, really, like to actually start to look at it and be like, oh, this could work. And it's usually 10 years before like you get to a place where
you
you're
can
like, oh, we
exit
actually,
or
yeah. I mean, you look at pretty much any business. Like you look at Vivint, you look at Uber or Airbnb, like all those companies. If you looked at the first 5 years, it's like, I don't think that's gonna work. And then you look at it the next 5 years, and it's like, oh, dude, the foundation that was laid the first five, like that set the stage for this, huge growth the next five.
yeah,
And so to have 3 years, I mean, obviously I didn't know that at the time, but to have 3 years of a run at it, it didn't, didn't feel like that was gonna be possible.
yeah,
So, so yeah, I mean, dude, it's funny because sometimes I think about, um, where I am now, like where Paul is now, and the things that we've done in our careers since that time. And I look back to this one time we were in Alabama. So it was in the summer. And you've
oh
been in
yeah,
Alabama in the
oh yeah,
summer, knocking doors.
oh yeah. I lived in Alabama. I loved it.
Yeah. And when we were there, you knew everything about it, right? Like
Yep.
yeah. So we had a project in Alabama. Um, we were changing out gas meters. So the meter solutions business was when everything back in 2007, 2008, this was when this was kind of happening, when all the utility companies were shifting from the meter you have on the side of the house that they had to send a meter reader out to the smart meters, right? So someone had to go install those. And usually you think, oh, maybe the utility did, but they're already operating and doing their thing. And so we would go to the utility companies and put together these projects basically. So it's
Which
crazy.
is, I, I can't even believe. So the first thing that's funny is, was this like your first opportunity after the mission?
Yeah. It was the
It's
first
like
thing.
the first thing that presented itself, and then you went and leveraged yourself against it. And the funniest part of the whole story to me, because all that's like, okay, cool. Like, I think depending on your mission present, they kind of put you in that mode of like when you get home. Todd Peterson's story is actually really similar, right?
Mm,
But the fact that it was some shit that you guys didn't know a single thing about, that was literally like the most random thing, is the
nothing.
part that cracks me up.
We knew nothing. And
That
dude,
cracks
and
me up.
we were kids, dude. Like we
Yeah.
were so young and we were what we did. I mean, we didn't know how to do anything. So we were like, okay, well, I mean, I guess we'll just start calling utility companies and we'll start calling like local water meter or local like municipalities that have, like where you pay your water bill. Like we would call.
Yeah.
And we didn't have an office. Obviously, we're bootstrapping this thing. And so Paul had an apartment and we would literally shout out Courtney because she would like go upstairs and we would sit in Paul's apartment next to each other and we just make calls. And they'd have questions. They'd be like, well, do you have like a technical guy that could answer whatever question? Or, can I talk to someone in like this department or whatever? And I'd be like, oh yeah, for sure. Let me transfer you to them. I'd like put it on mute for a second. And then I'd hand it to Paul right next to me. And he'd be like, this is Paul. And Paul's voice is a lot deeper. He'd see like he on the phone, he sounded older than I do. And then it was like I sounded like a kid. So it was funny, because one time, like in relation to that, I flew up to the Bay Area and we had a job we were working on in San Jose, and I'd done all the legwork to get the job. I'd talked to everybody and put together this presentation, and it was one of the utility companies that's like, they're in San Jose. So this is Silicon Valley. Like they're actually pretty sophisticated.
Okay.
So I show up to the meeting.
You're not in Alabama anymore.
No, I'll go back to that. Sorry. But I go to in this one. I show up to the meeting and I was 22 years old. Right. And at 22, I felt like I was an adult and I've done a lot in my life at that point. I felt like,
Yeah.
I felt like I was pretty legit. And I go in there and I do the whole presentation. And when you're presenting to a group like that, you have some people that are kind of executive level, but you have some people in there that like work in the meter shop, and so they're like kind of overalls and whatever in the meeting. And I do the whole presentation. And when I finish, a guy in the back who's like the meter shop guy, it's like quiet for a second and he like raises his hand and he's like, how old are you?
He's just so caught off
oh,
guard.
dude. And it happened every time, like it happened always.
Oh.
So we were just like,
how fun is that though? As you're describing it, like that's like the funnest crap in the world. Figuring things out and like really like not having a damn clue, but just being like, throwing mud against the wall in a situation like that is so freaking fun.
Yeah.
That's so especially with your best friend.
Yeah, it was
That's so fun.
awesome. And we had so much fun together, and back to the Alabama story, I think about this. I go back to this for some reason in my mind a lot because we were probably like 3 years into this, and I was it was the summer before I had one more year of school, and so I was setting up like my internship. And you know, I had like finished most of my like classes I was studying for. I was preparing to take the MCAT, all that stuff, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm in Alabama with Paul. It's the summer. Our guys are out like installing gas meters, you know, in Alabama. And we're in the meter shop, Paul and I. And we're standing there, and there's a huge, like one of those chicken farms, like Tyson chicken, you know,
Yep.
those are a lot of them are there.
Yep.
Those big things, they're smelly and they're kind of loud. And there's one like right outside of this huge meter shop, and it's outdoors. So like we're inside, but it's so hot. There's no air conditioning. You know how
Yeah.
Alabama is in the summer.
Yep.
And we were playing Lone Survivor on our phone. So we were like listening to this audiobook, and we were just like taking these meters, popping out these red like tamper plugs, removing these index screws, like replacing them on these new things, and then putting them aside so that our guys could go out and install them.
Yeah.
For 2 days, like we were just in this meter shop. We listened to Lone Survivor twice, and we were just plugging through this. And I remember having the thought, what the hell am I doing here?
Yeah.
Like what am I doing, dude? Like I'm in Alabama in a meter shop, sweating my ass off, and I'm just like, you know, like removing these indexes from this meter thing hundreds, and I mean we did it thousands of times. And I go back to that moment, I think, because in order for you to like actually build something that matters and like you know is big, you actually have to go through that. So you think like, how many times did you have that in summers where you're
So many
out
times.
knocking doors and you're like, dude, what am I doing out here?
You question your whole life. For a minute, for like a good chunk of time, you like sit there, and it's not like it's a very different feeling, because as you're saying it, I'm just thinking back to when I've thought it. It's not like this sucks. It's not that.
No, it's not that.
It's like this is my life? Like,
Yeah.
question mark? Like,
Yeah.
this is my life right now?
Yeah.
And I'm how old doing what?
Yeah.
And what just happened?
And how
I'm
is
like,
this aligned with my purpose? And
it's a very weird feeling.
it's weird. And especially you want to do the sexy things, right? Like you want to go, and especially, you know, if you spent time around like Todd Peterson and you see his lifestyle, you're like, oh, I want that, you know, I want to like have that or whatever.
Yep.
So those things seem great. But if you go back and you talk to Todd about the early days, you know,
He's living in a no AC trailer out in Arizona for Arizona summers with
Exactly.
no shower and 6 dudes.
Yeah.
Like,
and when I remember my mission president talking about like his early days when he went to Harvard, and they were married and they were having their kids, and they had nothing.
Mhm.
And their kid, like they didn't have mattresses for their kids to sleep in the apartment.
Mhm.
And they had like I think they had a bedroom and kind of a big closet that the kids slept in.
yeah.
And they were eating, you know, like ramen, and that was their life.
Yeah.
And, you know, now he's a billionaire multiple times over and obviously has a different life. But you go back to those times, and it's like, you actually have to go through those things. And there's something kind of purifying about that, you know?
And after the fact, like those are the best times. Like,
Yeah.
I think back to even COVID summer was a big example where literally it ended up, we didn't think we were going to be able to knock. It shut down anything I had ever known for work, right?
Right.
Was like out the door. You can't even
Yeah.
talk to people. You can't see people. So we start dialing like people
Yeah.
would cancel appointments. And I remember we were all sitting like 20 feet apart because I'm not going to say who, some guys were all paranoid about COVID. They didn't
The guys you were with?
Yes. By the way, I work with the same guys now that I worked with then.
Yeah.
That's a hint. Paranoid. I started getting a little bit sick. They wouldn't even let me go to, we call it the call center. It was just our office in Salt Lake. They wouldn't even let me go. So I had to stay at home and do it.
Wow.
And I remember like we're dialing these people, and they're like, we just told you guys no. Like, why are you calling? We literally just canceled on you. Why are you calling us?
Yeah.
And we're like, no, this is totally different, bro. Like, and just sitting there thinking, like, what am I doing?
Mhm.
This part of me was like, this sucks. Is this
Yeah.
ever going to work out? Do I need to find something different to do? Is the whole world going to change forever?
Totally.
But looking back now, I'm like, bro, those are the funniest. Like, we'd still talk about them. All those guys that I work with, we still go talk about them. And then you're weirdly grateful when you say purifying.
Mhm.
It's like it's actually a very, very, very good word for it. It's very like humbling, purifying, and then it makes you so grateful when you get that next level of success, and then you get to go through the same cycle all over at a different level.
Yeah.
And it's really, really cool. It's a really good point.
Yeah, and I think it's we had Kurt Doman come speak to our owners club group, which is like the guys that at in the street that qualified for equity all 4 quarters last
Yep.
year. And so we brought all those guys in a couple nights ago and had a really cool event. And Kurt Doman came in to speak to the group. And one of the things that he said that was kind of a powerful thing to me. It seems obvious, but he's also now he sold his company for $700 million and that he built from nothing. And he kind of told that whole story. And one of the things that he says is like, you just move forward. Like you just keep taking the next step and keep moving. And as you keep moving, like doors will open for you and things will unfold for you. I think it's really important to have like a vision of what you want to accomplish. That's actually an important thing.
Mm-hmm.
And he had his goal was to be a millionaire by 30 and he achieved it by 28. But like he didn't know how he's going to get there and it never was super obvious. Even when he was having success, it was still like, I mean, this thing could fall apart at any time.
Yeah.
And he was taking big risks but he was continuing to move forward consistently. And I was really grateful because I think it's important at whatever age you are, um, to have mentors that have accomplished things in your life that you admire and that
Mm-hmm.
you respect. And talking to them and getting their advice about what it is that you should be looking at doing, what could be the next steps, what's their advice about things. Because in life, like you can only lead people down the path as far as you've gone.
Mm-hmm.
And the role of a leader or a mentor is to meet you where you are and kind of model the next phase for you, right?
Yeah.
And if you think about all the good leaders that you've had, they've all been able to do that for you, right? Because they've done the things that you want to do. And I was lucky that my sister married one of those guys who is just he's amazing. Still one of my best friends and love him. And he was, I was just home from my mission. So I was 21, he was like 26.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, "Hey, you need to just set like a net worth goal by 35." And so I did. My net worth goal was 5 million by 35.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, I was 21. I didn't even know what that meant. That was just something that came to my mind.
Yeah.
And so that was like the one goal that I set. Like obviously have a family was another one that my mission president was like, "Hey, when you get home, focus on that." And so that was like my primary focus.
Yeah.
And then I made that goal. And so as like decision points came, it was really interesting because when I had the decision to go to med school, I'd got accepted to an internship at Harvard Medical School. My brother was at Harvard Dental School. He was 2 years in at the time, so he was pretty well connected there. He ended up getting his dental degree and then his MBA from Harvard. And so he kind of got me an interview with a doctor there. I did the interview, went really well, got accepted to go and intern for the summer.
Yeah.
So that was it. Like I was going to tell Paul, like, "Hey dude, this has been a great run." We both knew this was temporary while we were going to school.
Yeah.
And Paul and I had this conversation, and during the conversation, I can't explain like what happened, but it was this feeling where I just knew that I wasn't supposed to do that. Like I knew it.
Mm-hmm.
Like in my soul just knew. And it was kind of a confusing thing because I was like, this has been my path. Like this is what I was moving towards. I'd done so much work for it. I mean, the neuroscience degree is a lot of studying organic chemistry,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which is the worst,
Mhm.
and like those kind of things. And I'd slogged through physics and statistics and like calculus and organic chemistry, like stuff that I literally never use now,
Mm-hmm.
ever,
Mm-hmm.
grinding through all that stuff. And then all of a sudden I'm having this feeling like I'm not supposed to go do that. And it was a weird thing.
Yeah.
And I remember going back and talking to Missy and telling her like, hey, I had this experience. And she was like, yeah, I think that's right. Like, I feel that too.
That is wild.
Wild. So then what happened is I was like, okay, I didn't think that meant like never go, but I knew that I needed to go like that summer and like give this thing a go.
Mm-hmm.
We did that and we won some really big contracts with utility companies kind of that just came together that we've been working on for a while, but like they just kind of came together all at once. And Paul entered us into the Student Entrepreneur of the Year competition at
Mm-hmm.
BYU, and we ended up winning that competition. And so then they had this thing. It was the first year they'd ever done it, called the Utah Student 25, which was like they were going to recognize the top 25 student-run businesses in Utah. And so we like because we won Entrepreneur of the Year BYU, we entered that competition.
Yeah.
And we went to like you have to submit all the stuff about your business, and they do an interview with you and all that stuff. And so we went to the event gala, and we were like hoping we'd be in the top 25. We didn't know. We're all dressed up and we go there, and they start announcing like the from 25 going up, and they kept not saying our company. And honestly, the feeling that I had as we were getting higher on the list is like, I was like, oh, we didn't even make it in the top 25. Like you just
Yeah.
kind of have that feeling.
Yeah. Bracing yourself.
Yeah. And so then it came down to number 2, and they announced it, like who number 2 was. And then they were like, number 1, and they said our company, and they invited us up on the stage, and there was, there were hundreds and hundreds of people in this huge event, gala in Salt Lake. And it was pretty surreal. Like it was a surreal experience. And because of that, we caught some attention of different kind of VC groups and private equity groups, and we knew nothing about that world.
Yeah.
And so we ended up partnering with this group called Peak Capital. They're a pretty big group, but they only did real estate at that time.
Mm-hmm.
We were their first venture investment. And so they came to us and, said that they wanted to talk. And my cousin actually was an analyst for them.
Mm-hmm.
There were 3 partners and an analyst. That was it. So it was really small.
Wow.
And they ended up kind of buying our partners out of the business. So our relatives who had invested in the business from the beginning, they ended up getting this like a pretty good return on what they'd given us.
Yeah.
And pretty quickly, it was like the turnaround was 3 years from the time that they invested.
Hell yeah.
And so we were with Peak, and then what happened was at the time we were doing these meters that we were installing on the home that they were doing like stimulus funding for these projects,
Mm-hmm.
and the government had tied a certain amount of that, like the money was tied to in-home displays that could communicate with the meter and show customers their energy consumption.
Yeah.
So we were looking for partners to come in and like give the government was paying for these in-home displays. And so I knew Todd Santiago, so I reached out to Todd, and he was at 2GIG at the time.
Yeah.
And 2GIG was making the new panels and stuff for Vivint. And Vivint was Apex Alarm still, but they were just rebranding to Vivint.
Mm-hmm.
And so we went and met with Todd like one morning, and we were just talking about partnership and what that could look like and what their technology was and all that stuff. And then Todd texted me after and said, hey, Alex Dunn wants to meet with you. And I didn't know who Alex was.
Mm-hmm.
And so we went to the Vivint building,
Mm-hmm.
And at the, kind of mouth of the canyon. I think that's where it still is.
Yep.
I'm not sure, but we went and met with Alex, and he was like, hey, we want to buy your company. And dude, Paul, it was me and Paul. We're sitting in there, and we're like so unexpected. Like we just never even
you don't
considered
even know what
that.
to say.
Of course not, dude. We're like 24, at the time.
Yeah.
And we're kind of like, I'm sure because Alex is awesome, and he's experienced a lot at this point. I'm sure he kind of saw through it, but we like stone faced. We're like, well, you're gonna have to overpay because we just had a private equity group invest or whatever. And he's like, okay, well, let us know a number and whatever. And So we went back that night and we were like, I don't know, how do you like value this? And we talked to Peak about it. Luckily we had those guys and ended up coming back, you know, talking about a price and obviously agreed to terms on that. And then it was pretty quick. I mean, within like a few weeks, we were like working for Vivint
Mhm.
And started up. That was when they were like Vivint Internet and Vivint Smart Home and Vivint. They wanted to do a healthcare and Vivint
Yep.
Energy was the thing.
Yep.
So Vivint Energy became Vivint Solar, and so kind of being part of that from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Like Paul and I shared a lifetime table that from
The
Costco,
yeah.
and you know we'd come in and it was interesting because we had to bootstrap Vivint Solar too. Like um it was just it was a really cool thing to be a part of because it was entrepreneurship all over again, but this time with like, you know, a little more resources, like a little more we had access to a marketing team, we had access to a legal team, we had access to those things. But at the beginning, it was kinda like, what's a solar panel? How do you install it?
Yeah.
Like, how do you how do you finance it? How do you sell it? Um, you know, and so we built like a rooftop on the ground in Vivint's training center
Mhm.
where they would train their alarm techs. We just like built like a basically a fake roof, and we had racking companies come in and like show us their racking, and panel companies come in and show us their panels, and we would trained Vivint alarm technicians how to install solar panels, and then we sent a sales guy out to New Jersey with a PPA that you know we'd like drawn up or whatever, and he called like the first day he was out there, and he's like, "Hey, I think I got one," and we are like, "Oh, cool! Like, there's a whiteboard." So we're like, "Okay, what's the customer's name? What's like their
No
you know?"
way. The
Oh yeah,
first ledger was a whiteboard.
the first 15 accounts we tracked on a whiteboard.
That's
That
incredible.
was yeah, dude. I think I we still have pictures of it.
Holy crap.
The early days were, you know, we were in the Dynex building next to the Vivint building,
Yep.
where it's the I think it's the Qualtrics.
Mhm.
I don't know if they're still there, but Qualtrics was the startup. They were in the first floor.
Mhm.
Vivint Solar was the startup. We were in the top floor, and we just had like this one little like kind of suite with 3 office spaces and then like a you know just like an open space.
Mhm.
And 4 of us had, you know, like there were 2 offices, and then Paul and I shared an office, and then we had like a CAD designer that was out in like the open space, and that was it.
That is crazy.
Yeah, dude.
That is so wild.
Yeah. So, you know, it was cool kind of being able to wear a lot of hats for the company. Working on some fundraising, working on you know, like setting up a warehouse and drawing like where the racking was going to go, and then flying out with the film crew and organizing, you know, customer testimonials and like sales training videos, and getting up on the roof and harnessing in and like installing a system while the film crew's filming me and our head of operations installing a system
Yeah.
to show techs, like to train them on how to install,
Yeah.
um, holding the boom mic if I needed to for, you know, for like while we're recording, just doing whatever needed to be done to kind of get the thing rolling.
Yeah.
And so, you know, watching that happen, going through the Blackstone acquisition, going through you know, the company going public and
Yeah.
the Sunrun, you know, whole acquisition, like that whole thing was pretty incredible. But my transition into like the direct to home part of it was kind of one of those also big decision points, you know, where it was like the feeling that I had at the time, I was responsible for business development. So anything outside of direct to home, because that's all Vivint Solar did. We didn't even have an inside sales team. So it was
Mhm.
like, let's set up inside sales. Let's have other routes to market through retail, through home builders, through all that kind of stuff. So I was responsible for going out and finding all those partnerships. And I just got to a point where I was like, I don't really love doing this.
Mhm.
And I was just feeling like I gotta make a change, and I didn't know what it meant. And Chance Allred, who you've met Chance,
Yeah.
right?
Chance awesome.
He's the best. Um Chance and I were really close. We talk all the time then, and he was running sales. And that was the one part I knew all of our sales guys, but I'd never like really been to a meeting. I'd never really like gone and experienced the culture of the direct to home part. And at this point we'd grown a lot. we had teams all over the country, and Chance has been such a close friend to me and also a real mentor. Like, he's someone you, like, can really look up to. He's just deeply genuine, such amazing character. Like,
Mm.
he's awesome. And,
Mhm.
he just looked at me, and I think he just had this inner knowing, and he was like, "Hey, you should go, like, run a market for us." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "Go run a market." And I'm like, "You mean, like, go knock doors?" And he was like, "Well, yeah, that'd be part of it." And I'm like, "Chance, I would literally never go knock doors." Like, after all the stuff that I've been through, dude, like, there is no way that I'm gonna go and subject myself to that, you
Yeah.
know? And, he was like, "I get it, like, but why don't you just come out with me to New York? We're going out for, like" this was the beginning of 2015. He's like, "Why don't you come out with, Paul and I to New York and just see, like, come visit the teams, and we're doing 2 region conferences in New York and New Jersey, and just see what it's like." So we fly out and do these conferences, and obviously, you know what these are like.
Mhm.
All the sales guys are there, and one of the guys, was I'd met him, like, a couple years earlier, and he was a rep for us. And, at the time, he just started, and he was new. He'd sold alarms before, and, he'd gone into New York, and there was nothing there, and he built 8 teams,
Mhm.
and New York was crushing. So I go into this place, and there's 500 reps in this room, and there's 500 people, like, reps and their plus ones and stuff.
Mhm.
And I just watched, like, the influence that he had and the way he was able to, like, inspire people. And I just looked at that and I'm like, "Man, that's powerful."
Mhm.
Like, that's really cool. And then the next day I went to the New Jersey one, and I saw a leadership council with the director and his market leaders, like, sitting around a table and going through all these things. It was super principled, really dialed, and I was like, "Man, this is really different than what I thought it was going to be." And I could just see myself doing that role. Like, it felt like, man, that's feels kind of like what I was born to do, you know?
Yeah.
And and so then Chance sat me down and, like, showed me the income that those guys, like, the top 20 or whatever, and I was like, dude, I'm like an executive at a publicly traded company. These guys are making 2, 3, 4. The top guy was like 6 times what I was making then.
Yeah.
And I looked at that and I'm like, dude, okay. So if one of these guys is making 4x what I'm making, that means that's 4 years of my life, because I'm in a job where I can't influence my income. Like, a
Mhm.
corporate job, you can get a small raise, bump and stuff,
Yeah.
but, like, you can't really go and sell more stuff and make more money or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I looked at it, I'm like, that's 4 years of my life force, like, my time, energy, everything that guy is earning in 1 year.
Yeah.
And so I just did the math on that, and I had a goal of my net worth by the time I was 35, and I was like, I mean, I'm gonna go and do that because that's gonna be the thing that gets me to that place.
Yeah.
And again, it was one of those moments of, like, inner knowing. And I told Chance, I'm like, "Hey, I think I could convince Missy to live in San Diego." And he's like, "Perfect. That's where we need you."
That is
Little did I
so
know at the time,
wild.
dude, San Diego was, like, the worst place to go. I didn't
To
know.
go?
The worst. So, dude,
Hey,
it
it's
was
not too bad now, right? Now you're
it's
great.
amazing,
Now
yeah,
you're great.
but it was not like that, dude, at the start. Like, the amount of there was a local thing called the Turco Files,
Yeah.
which is, like, this guy with this bushy mustache that does these, like, investigative journalism pieces, and it airs on the local news and people watch it. And it was so bad there, like, operationally for our customers and everything, that Turco did a 7-part series on Vivint Solar that
No.
aired week after week after week. So our guys that were out selling, knocking,
Just getting crushed.
yeah, dude, everyone. It was like, hey, as soon as they found out you're with Vivint, they're like, oh, I saw you on Turco Files. Like, no way I do business, slam the door. So just imagine, like, the rep morale,
Yeah.
the belief in the company. all of those things, it was like not there.
Mm-hmm.
Pay was really low. System sizes were small. We were paid on system size versus like on profitability. It was just system size. And so we had the lowest system size in the country at the time. And so, in addition to like learning how to knock doors and sell, learning how to like recruit and build a team, I also had to like fix operations and like do that whole thing too.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's one of those things where I look back on like key moments where I'm like getting off the doors at 8:30, driving to the office to sit and like go through all these files and create like a system so that we could streamline operations. And, I've got pictures of us like 10 p.m., 11 p.m., like going through this stuff because it was an urgent thing we had to fix. And it wasn't my job to do it. But like, because we engaged in that way, we created, obviously something that we built it into what it is now, which, San Diego has been, they now install 2,000 accounts a quarter in San Diego.
So wild.
Yeah.
It's so wild. It's so crazy. So it's like, I actually didn't know some of those parts about your story, which is really, really cool. And I can't imagine like your knee-jerk reaction to Chance, and Chance Allred's amazing. Every interaction I've had with the dude, I'm like, bro, you're a uniquely, really, really, really cool person.
Yeah.
And we're going to have him on. I'm super excited to have him on because I don't know anything about him. So I'm
Yeah.
really excited to learn about it.
Yeah.
But like your knee-jerk reaction when Chance is like, you should run a market for us is like, that's like a predictable and a valid knee-jerk reaction. Like, what? Like, no, I don't want to do that at all.
Of course.
And then I think you realize in direct sales, you basically get to go and choose your own value. Like you get to go and determine your own value based on how much value you can go create.
Yeah.
And it's just a game of value creation, which is the exact same game as going and starting a business. And like at the end of the day, the meter business you started, like you have been in value creation since you got back from your mission.
Yeah.
And that makes a lot of sense why when you got into the direct sales, you were able to go and do what you did. Like you were already in the world of value creation, and value creation doesn't have a role. And I think that's like a very, very common theme in everything that you've ever done is you don't really have a role when you're in value creation. Your role is go and make sure there's value created and as much as possible in the best way possible. So if that means you're the housing coordinator, which is what I am right now, that's what you are. Like if that means you're the top rep, that's what you are. If that means you're the one who organizes trainings, that's what you are. If that means you're the therapist when your reps are mentally breaking down, that's what you are.
Right.
If that means, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, totally.
And I think that's so, I just wanted to highlight that because you've mentioned it throughout everything you've done. And it's just value creation after value creation after value creation to go and accomplish really, really big things and also go and get compensated. And that's the unique thing about direct sales. And I think that's probably, actually that is from when you're saying you looked at their income and some of them were 2x, 4x, and 6x, it's just because they were in the game of being compensated for the value they provided rather than either having a ceiling or being predetermined what they would be compensated and then providing the value. Does that make sense? It's very aligned.
100%. And you know what's crazy is I've actually never realized until you just said that that's the reason why I felt like hedged up in the position that I was at corporate.
Yeah.
Because I got to the point where it was really difficult to create value and point to it and say like, that's the value that I'm creating. And that's really fulfilling to create value. And so just until you said that, I didn't realize like that's true. And that's why I think I felt the way that I felt, which was the thing that got me to I guess be open to making a change like that. And then getting to a point where Ty Williams has been saying this thing that as you increase in complexity, like you have to increase in capacity. And so if you think about that, like when you first start in pretty much any industry, any job, your role is typically really simple, right? Like if you go into the financial industry as an analyst, your role is going to be very, very simple. And as you prove yourself in that role, then you take on more responsibilities. Your role gets more complex. You have to increase your capacity. And I think what happens a lot of times is people get to a place where they're kind of content, or they're in a position where they're not able to they're not able to increase the complexity of the work that they're doing. And
Mhm.
so they kind of just get stuck
Yeah.
in a plateau for a long time.
Yeah.
And growth is energy and maintenance is fatigue. And so they go like they're maintaining for a really long time and they're tired. They've lost that spark.
Yeah.
And so like you think about, okay, well, how do I have energy in my life? How do I feel purposeful? And the way to do that is like grow, like in whatever it is that you're doing, and put yourself in a place where you have the opportunity to have more complexity, take on more things.
Yeah.
And we say this all the time, but like our job is a personal development program with a compensation plan attached, right?
100%.
And the compensation will only increase in proportion to your personal development. And as soon as the personal development stops, the compensation will follow that. And so you've probably seen that a lot of times where people get to a certain point and then they kind of fall off
Yeah.
because they got to that point and they start to like rest on the things that they did, and they stop developing and creating value. And so things kind of start to like fall off for them,
Yeah.
and they can kind of earn for a little bit, but it will always catch up, right? And kind of follow the
100%.
same trend as your growth.
I love you. I've never actually heard that. You said growth is energy and maintaining is fatigue. I've
Mhm.
never ever heard that, and it's so freaking true. And I have a hard time in what you're talking about, people falling off. I don't necessarily think people go and they fall off like, oh, I'm gonna go and like take a step back. They don't do that. They're
Mhm.
like, no, I'm comfortable where I'm at. I'm gonna maintain right here.
Mhm.
And there is one thing I've learned in this industry, with an industry that's moving forward so quickly, there's no such thing as maintaining.
Mhm.
You're either moving forward faster than the wave, you're moving forward slower than the wave, which means you're still shrinking,
Yeah.
or you think you're maintaining and you're very quickly falling behind.
100%.
And it's like, I think that's like the biggest misconceptualized thing, because people think there's a level that they want to get to. Someone wants to be a DDM, and once they're a DDM and they make their $500,000 a year, that'll be good. And they're cool staying there for 10 years. You don't stay there
You
for
don't
10
stay
years.
there. Yeah.
You either go and you continue to like outpace
Mhm.
the market, you could say,
Yeah.
or you shrink. Like, and there's
That's
not
right.
really like, and that's actually exciting. It shouldn't be demotivating or scary. Like, that's a good thing, because then it's way more fun. And
Mhm.
like you said, growth is energy. It's like, maintaining is not fun.
Yeah.
Maintaining is miserable.
Yeah.
And that's why it's deteriorating, and that's why it takes your energy, and that's why it's not actually maintaining, you're losing when you're maintaining.
Yeah, and like you've seen this in the industry, but people will say things like, "Oh, I want to like get off the doors," right? Like that's like a goal that like everybody says. And it doesn't the doors is a means of value creation, like you were
Mhm.
saying, and influence. So in Castle, who you had on the podcast recently,
Yeah.
he talks about, I think John Maxwell says like leadership is influence, and Castle adds to that, like in this job it's influence over volume. And so however you're going to influence volume, you got to do that. So your path to being off the doors is really like create value, create complexity in your role, like create influence in a way that you can impact volume.
Mhm.
And Chance actually said this to our leadership group yesterday, and it was like one of those moments where I was like, oh dude, I haven't heard that before,
Mhm.
and I'm pretty sure he just made this up. But he said, if people aren't copying you in a year, then you're not innovating enough, like you're not pushing things forward enough.
Mm.
And
I like that.
yeah, think about that. Like even think about like this thing you're doing here, like the podcast thing. Obviously there's podcasts out there,
Mhm.
but like this is something that you just decided to start doing, right? And I don't know the story behind it. I'd actually love to hear it.
Mhm.
But I've listened to your podcast and it's awesome. And it's value creation for a lot of people that you work with and that you don't even know that listen to it. And it's just something that you made up, and it doesn't really pay you, and it's not like it's not a means of actual probably income for you at this point, but it is a means of value creation and influence. And
Mhm.
that matters. It turns out that like as you continue to kind of move things forward and increase in your own capacity, 5 years from now or 10 years from now, maybe you're not still doing a podcast, but the thing that you did here like morphed into
Yeah.
like you wouldn't have been able to get to where you were going without that part of your path.
Totally.
Do you know what I mean?
100%. Yeah. And I think that's like the best. I think you mentioned mentors earlier. There's so many things you mentioned I'd love to dive into, and we're going to go over. So we're going to have to do a second episode where we dive into everything. But one of the things you mentioned was mentors. And one of the biggest takeaways I got from mentors from since I was 14 and 15 was if you can find a way to go provide more value than anybody else, you'll always win.
Mm-hmm.
If you can treat your people like gold and put them before you, you'll always win. And it's a bonus point if you can find a way to be compensated on the value you bring.
Yeah.
He said the first two are more important. The third one, that's a bonus point.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole reason, and people always ask me too, we have a really strange job, especially my job. Like, my job is way less professional seeming than what a lot of the street guys do. When you're a seasonal and you do summer sales, quote unquote, and you recruit the college students and they ship out for 4 months and they come home, and then you're in recruiting season and you're in retaining season. And it's like, it's a very, very, it seems like a very temporary job until you go realize it's like the trifecta. Like, you get to go in and like, you kind of don't have rules on how to go provide value. It's just go provide as much.
Right.
You can follow someone else's blueprint.
Totally.
But those aren't rules.
Yeah.
Those are like, it's like a guideline and a pathway that works, but there might be a way more gnarly pathway that you could choose to take. Might be,
and there almost always is.
Almost always is.
Yeah.
And we get compensated for it. So it's like, I get asked all the time why I still do what I do. Hopefully you don't get asked that. And I assume you get asked that much less than I do. But like, I get asked all the time why I still do what I do. And so do my people. Like, my little brothers work for me or with me. My cousin works with me, and they run markets, and like, they're crushing. Like, they get asked by people, adults that are making a quarter what they're making or half what they're making if they're really lucky. And they're like, well, how much longer are you going to do it? And I'm like, that is the dumbest question I've ever heard. It is the dumbest question I've ever heard, because you're being trained to go provide value. You're being trained to go and put your people first. And then you're being trained. When I say trained, no one's telling them.
Yeah.
They're learning through experience. Life is training them on how to go create value and be compensated for it. And I think it's the coolest, like, it's very cool that you had the humility to realize, oh shit. And maybe it was chance that like pushed you over that, it sounds like, or maybe even the money as well. But like, to be able to go and be from a seat of an executive position to go and be like, okay, yeah, I would be willing to go and do that. If that's how I can go provide value, take care of people, and be compensated for it, it's really cool. Like, that's very, very cool.
Yeah. And Chance, it's funny when he flew me out to meet Ty, and I'd met Ty, but I didn't know Ty. I used to see Ty in the Vivint days when we were both at Vivint.
Yeah.
And he'd ride in on his motorcycle, and Ty has like, he has like different style. And I actually thought he looked like he was like kind of I don't know, like not a super nice guy or whatever. Like, I don't know. I don't know why I had that judgment of him, but if you know Ty, he's literally the coolest.
So friendly.
He's the best, dude. Like, Ty's been my leader for 10 years. Right. And because I'm an entrepreneur, I've never really liked having a boss. And I've never felt that way with Ty ever. Like, I've always felt like he's my friend, he's my partner. And I've learned, like, I'm constantly chasing him to try to catch up. And he's constantly innovating on who he is and leveling up. And so who Ty was 3 years ago, I'm better than that version of Ty, but he's way better than he was 3 years ago. So it's like, I'm constantly kind of following and chasing Ty, and you should always be around people like that. Like, you should always be around the very best people that you can be around, like you with Brad Rossiter, like when you're around people like that, and, and Kelton and Nate, like the other directors with you, like those guys are absolute studs. And being around those guys, how much does that level you up as a person?
Yeah. And it like, it taps into the competitive side of things. It taps into like you size everyone up when you walk into a room always, or you should, at least. If you're not, you should. And if you're ever in a room where you're the top 10% every time you walk in, you need to get into a totally different room.
100%.
You have to.
Yeah, dude.
Even though it's incredibly uncomfortable, and it's really nice to finally be that top 10% in a room every once in a while, you got to just go get in a bigger room.
Yeah.
You have to. And you're absolutely right.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times, what I've seen in our industry specifically, but I think this is true of human nature in general, is that people want to figure out ways to skip steps,
Yep.
right? And so how can I find the shortcut?
Yep.
How can I get to that place faster
Yep.
by avoiding the thing,
Yeah, the
right?
hard thing.
But the thing is what gets you there. Like that thing is the thing you have to become obsessed with
Mhm.
in order to be able to have like the other parts that come along with that, right?
And it's not only the thing that gets you there, it's the thing that you're always I've interviewed a lot of people.
Mhm.
I've heard about a lot of, like, I would call it, like, the valleys is what you're describing.
Yeah.
They're always what they're the most not only is it the only thing that'll get you to where you wanna go, it's the only way. It is also what you look back and you're like, "Oh, wow, that's amazing, and I'm incredibly grateful for that." And
Yeah.
there was another guest in the podcast that we just talked about, and it's fresh in my mind because I just listened to a podcast with Matthew McConaughey, and it says, like, the beautiful tragedy of life is we have to live it going forward, but it only makes sense looking back.
Yeah.
And it's like, all those hard things that are so scary looking forward, just do it,
Yeah.
and you'll look back and it'll make perfect sense, and you'll be so glad you did.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. And I think when you're it's really important, obviously everyone knows the saying of like you become the composite of the 5 people that you spend your time around.
Mhm.
And I feel like I've heard that for decades now. Like it's just a thing, but now like it's being scientifically proven and all that type of thing because what you don't realize is whatever culture you grow up in, your family, your community, your high school, your religion, all of those things create frameworks through which you see the world and process what's happening.
Yep.
And so you were telling me about how you grew up, and you grew up like in not ideal circumstances, right?
Mhm.
But you were around people that taught you a different way of seeing things and thinking about things than probably what you grew up in, right?
100%. Yeah.
And so it's really one of the most important things I think and why it's important to surround yourself with really good people is because what they'll do is challenge the frameworks that you have that no longer serve you. And because the reality is like everyone's viewpoint is a view from a point. And most people want to be certain about their viewpoint.
Mhm.
It's really what I found. Like Mary Powell is one of the best leaders that I've ever seen close up. David Bywater was also an incredible leader. The thing about both of them that's and a lot of the leaders that I work with are like this is that they're open and curious, which doesn't mean that they can't be decisive and take action and be sure about the course that they've decided to take, but they're always open and curious and
Mhm.
willing to look at other viewpoints and take feedback and challenge the frameworks that they have that are most of the time subconscious programming that we have.
Yeah.
That's why it's important to listen to podcasts and hear how other people see the world and other people's experiences
Yeah.
because you don't have that experience. But
Yep.
being able to listen to someone else who has that experience can really help you to kind of reframe and rewire. And one of the most dangerous things I think is, there's a lot of fakeness in the world, especially now with social media, and people can kind of say anything on social media.
Mhm.
And a lot of times there's no accountability for what they say.
0.
And what I've learned is that empty barrels make the loudest noise, right? And so typically when people are like really loud and like, not aggressive, but kind of that way on social media,
Yeah.
usually those are the ones with the least substance to what they're doing,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And so like when you meet people who are we call them the real kind, you recognize it because in their life, you can see the fruits of the way that they live and approach things.
Mhm.
And usually, they're the kind of people who have stuck to the things that they're doing for a long time and haven't jumped around thinking the grass is greener here or the grass is greener there or there's probably a shortcut here or whatever.
Mhm.
They made the decision to do the thing they're doing And then they kept looking around as they were going along, open and curious as they navigated their path, finding mentors that would help them to get to the next place, leaving behind ones that aren't serving them anymore, filtering out those types of relationships from their life, and moving forward in a way that is purposeful, you know? And as you do that and stack up a lot of losses and wins too along the way, then you can build a life that you're excited about and that you're proud of.
100%. Dude, I love that. There's not a better comment to end on. And in out of respect for your time and everyone else's time and everything, dude, that was awesome. We could absolutely go and do part two. We probably will end up having to do a part two to go unpack a lot of things because I have a million extra questions for you. And you're going to get a million texts from me after this just with questions about work. So, dude, Taylor, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. I know it was a journey to get here. And now you're going to go back home to sunny California and get
That's
out of
right,
the cold.
dude.
So
Yeah.
I love you for it, man. Thank you so much. And
Thanks, dude.
everybody, thank you guys for watching. Until next time.